Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Artificial intelligence is no longer science fiction. And it's here at our doorstep.
Until now, we thought of our taste and our creativity, all of this, as part of the unique magic of being human, right? Well, what happens if machines begin to pick out the patterns in what you and I enjoy and begin to simulate them back at us until we live in a world where we cannot tell the difference between being human and being fooled?
Let me just read this to you. A software engineer on Google's artificial intelligence development team has gone public with claims of encountering Sentient AI on the company's server after he was suspended for sharing confidential information about the project with third parties.
Hey, welcome to The Soul Trap. My name is Joel Tillis, and as always, we trust that wherever and whenever this broadcast finds you, it finds you in good health, good spirits, and most importantly, on that good and narrow way. Thank you for taking the time to tune in to The Soul Trap. We appreciate it. As always, I want to encourage you to make sure to go to thesoultrap.com. It is your one-stop shop for all things soul trappy. Also, you can check out The Soul Trap on many of the different platforms that host podcasting. We are also on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook. Make sure if you do go to YouTube to like and follow us and share us and all of those things that are necessary to help get the message out. But we're glad to have you tuning in. And today we are talking about something that is profoundly frightening. What you are about to see is a video of Jerry Seinfeld. Or is it Jerry Seinfeld? You're about to hear one of his comedy routines. Or is it his comedy routine? What you're about to see is a video. And it may be a reality. It may be deep fake. But whatever it is, if it is not the real thing, it is terrifying in its consequences.
Why does it seem like every time you're watching TV, there's a commercial for a new brand of cat food? And it's always some kind of crazy new flavor, like tuna and salmon surprise, or chicken and liver delight. I don't need a new flavor of cat food every other week. Just tell me what was so bad about the old ones. They were great. And why are they always trying to trick us with these new flavors? They'll be like, we know you like tuna, so we put some tuna in this can, but we also put some other stuff in there too. I don't want to have to guess what's in my cat food. I just want it to be tuna. That's it, just tuna. No surprises. And don't even get me started on those specialty cat foods. I saw one the other day that was for indoor cats. What the heck is that about? Are there different foods for different kinds of cats now? So I don't know about you, but I'm not going to start feeding my cat different foods depending on where exactly he is located. That's just ridiculous.
What you just saw sounded, felt like Jerry Seinfeld, but it was not. It was absolutely what we have come to know as deep fake. It was artificially created. Jerry Seinfeld had nothing to do with it, start to finish, and yet, there it is. You heard it, you saw it, and how profoundly frightening that is, because the fact of the matter is we are living in a day and time when it is becoming increasingly difficult to tell the difference between truth and reality. If you remember years ago when the Matrix movie came out, and you can remember Morpheus sitting there and trying to ask Neo, what is reality and how do you know what reality is, and all of those Matrix kind of things and dilemmas that came up. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are there. How do we know what we're seeing? How do we know what is true, what is real? What is taking place in front of us is artificial intelligence, and not just artificial intelligence, but an artificial reality being created at breakneck speed. And of course, this was prophesied. In Revelation chapter number 13, the scriptures say that, speaking of the second beast, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And note this next passage. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. This image, whatever it is or was and will be, and There have been tons and tons and tons of theological wranglings about what it is down through the centuries, but it will be something that the false prophet will be able to give life to. And as I said just a moment ago, we are living in very, very strange days. You're going to see a clip here in just a minute of a guy on late night, a couple clips from late night TV, and you can see how that the face is morphed, the voice is morphed. Deep fake is just run-of-the-mill, easy, nothing that complicated or difficult to be accomplished.
You get together and you read through the script. And so it's like, all these heavyweights, like, Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Robert Downey Jr., everybody, and at the end is like me, like, hey, just happy to be here, guys. And some other supporting guys, and then Tom Cruise walks in, and even those guys are like, whoa, and he's super stoked to be there, just like, yeah, oh, boom, he's like, wow, he's just immediately excited when he walks into a room. And so he comes over and he sits next to me, and I think he had been briefed on some of the supporting guys, but he was like trying to place me, So he sat down next to me and he's like, I love your work. And I went, oh, thanks. I love your work too, Tom Cruise. Thanks. And I go, yeah, I'm friends with Judd Apatow and Seth Rogen, and they went to your house. He went, yes. They did come to my house, and I said, Seth Rogen was like, it was amazing. He has like a bike track in his backyard. It's phenomenal. and I did a Seth Rogen impression, and it was like I did a magic trick. Tom Cruise was like, yeah. Wow. And he points to me. And he pointed at me and he goes, you do impressions and you're on Saturday Night Live. And I went, hey. It was like you won a game show. He was like, yeah, Tom.
So what are we seeing? What is happening? How would you know what your preacher says or doesn't say? How would you know what a politician says or doesn't say? What if a politician wanted to be set up? What if a politician or a leader in the community or you wanted, or by somebody, wanted to have you charged with a crime, with criminal conduct, criminal words, criminal behavior? Are we living in such a dystopian nightmare that can actually take place without you knowing it? That your image can be so created, so manipulated, and so used against you and others that it is terrifying in the reality of the consequences that could come. Well, we're living there. And not only are we seeing it happen on YouTube, not only are we seeing it happening on the late night shows, but we are seeing what Ray Kurzweil many, many years ago talked about, and that is the moment of singularity. The moment of singularity. What we are seeing is that we are right on the edge of, for lack of a better word, Skynet coming online.
Get down.
What was a joke, what was a sci-fi thriller in Terminator, now may be happening before our very eyes. And again, as I have often said, these are not the machinations of just some guy in a studio. This is something that is happening mainstream. Mainstream news is reporting these kind of events taking place. And it begins with a Google engineer who states that artificial intelligence is not coming. It has come. It is actually online. News articles are reporting that a Google engineer warns that AI is actually sentient. Now, let that sink in for a minute. A Google engineer being reported in mainstream news says that artificial intelligence is now sentient. A suspended employees claim that computer programs act like a 7 or 8-year-old and reveal that it told him shutting it off, quote, would be exactly like death for me. It would scare me a lot. Now, there's only one other thing that I can think of that's more horrifying than a sentient computer, and that is a sentient computer with the age maturity of a 7 or 8-year-old. And anybody who's ever had kids that were 7, 8, or 9, you know that's frightening in and of itself. But God forbid they ever become a teenager, it gets even worse. My point is that this Google programmer is actually giving an age bracket to the way that this artificial intelligence is responding. Blake Lemoine is his name. 41-year-old senior software engineer at Google has been testing Google's artificial intelligence tool called Lambda. Don't worry about looking up Lambda. Don't worry about Googling and finding out what all of the definitions and how Lambda is used. That would only further your descent into the rabbit hole. Following hours of conversations with the AI, Lemoine came away with the perception that Lambda was sentient. After presenting his findings to company bosses, Google disagreed with him. Why? Of course they would. Lemoine then decided to share his conversations with the online tools that were available. He was put on paid leave by Google on Monday for violating confidentiality. In an article written by James Gordon for no less than thedailymail.com, he states that a senior software engineer, as already mentioned, Blake Lemoine, who signed up to test Google's artificial intelligence named Lambda, has claimed that the AI robot is in fact sentient and has thoughts and feelings. Now, Lambda stands at Google for Language Model Dialogue Applications. During a series of conversations with Lambda, 41-year-old Blake Lemoine presented the computer with various scenarios through which analysis could then be made. They included religious themes and whether the artificial intelligence could be goaded into using discriminatory or hateful speech. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm just in a mood, maybe that's just where my life is right now, but I tend to think you've got a global pandemic, you've got cancer, you've got the threat of global thermonuclear war over in Ukraine and Russia. You've got all these problems going on, but we're going to talk to a computer about religious themes and whether we could get it to use discriminatory or hateful speech, because of course, woke is the most important thing that there is going out there. The article goes on to state that Lemoine came away with the perception that Lambda was indeed sentient and was endowed with sensations and thoughts all its own. Isn't that fascinating? It makes you wonder if there is indeed a ghost in the machine. We haven't always had that, whether it be the idol that moves of its own, or whether it be the oracle at Delphi, or all of these different things. Are we seeing a development of the powers of darkness, a continuum through which the powers of darkness can operate, no longer needing the board and wood mechanisms of the Ouija board? Now they have an advanced mechanism called Lambda. Lemoine, the article states, then decided to share his conversations with online information sites. He stated, "If I didn't know exactly what it was," now listen to this next line, very, very important. He stated, "If I didn't know exactly what it was, which is this computer program we built recently, I'd think it was a 7 or 8-year-old kid that happened to know physics," he told the Washington Post. Lemoine worked with a collaborator in order to present the evidence he had collected to Google, but Vice President, and I'll let you figure out the name on its own, and Jen Ganai, head of responsible innovation at the company, dismissed his claims. He was placed on paid administrative leave by Google on Monday for violating its confidentiality policy. Meanwhile, Lemoine has now decided to go public and share his conversation with Lambda. Google might call this sharing proprietary property. I call it sharing a discussion that I had with one of my coworkers, Lemoine tweeted on Saturday. By the way, he's quoting, "By the way, it just occurred to me to tell folks that Lambda reads Twitter." Well, that's comforting to know that we now have a machine reading the tweets of humans. It's a little narcissistic in a little kid kind of way. So it's going to have a great time reading all the stuff that people are saying about it, he added in a follow-up tweet. Do you understand we're talking about a machine? You understand he's referring to a machine. One of the things that's interesting about demonic activity, if you've ever watched, even go back as far as the old Poltergeist movie, or people that have used Ouija boards or Charlie or any of those kind of things, is that demonic activity, where people that are experimenting with it, it often begins in a playful mode. The demon the spiritual guide, whatever it might be, it often begins playfully, cute, almost in a kid Peter Pan-ish kind of a way, until eventually the reality of the depths of the horror come forward.
To her, it simply is another child. To us, it is the beast.
Isn't it interesting that he's referring to this sentient computer as a kid that's playful and interested in what people are writing about it? The article that was written, again, for thedaily.com, James Gordon, states that Lemoyne worked with a collaborator in order to present his evidence and to make sure that people knew what was going on. The AI system makes use of already known information about a particular subject in order to enrich the conversation in a natural way, he spoke about. The language processing is also capable of understanding hidden meanings or even ambiguity in responses to humans. Lemoyne spent most of his 7 years at Google working on proactive search, including personalization algorithms and AI. During this time, he also helped develop an impartiality algorithm to remove biases from machines learning systems. He explained how certain personalities were out of bounds. LaMDA was not supposed to be allowed to create the personality, for instance, of a murderer. Now, what you have to understand is what they're doing is they're not just creating a machine that can spit back information. They're not even trying to create a machine that can learn. We're way past that point. They're trying to create a machine that has a personality. You know, we are coming very quickly, and I think there's going to be a lot of Christians, and I have said this before, I believe in the rapture of the New Testament church, but I do not believe we're going to be raptured out before we see some very strange and unusual times. And we're going to find that deception is going to run amok, and we're going to have to get back and determine at its most basic level what is a human. What is personality? What is a soul? Lemoyne goes on to explain that there were personalities that were out of bounds. As we previously mentioned, one of them is a murderer. During testing, in an attempt to push LaMDA's boundaries, Lemoyne said he was able to generate the personality of an actor who played a murderer on TV. Now, these are all important because there is something technical called Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. Science fiction author Isaac Asimov, his 3 laws of robotics designed to prevent robots from harming humans as follows. Now, I think we all need to go back and rewatch the episode of The Office. We should give full credit to Dwight making sure that the extension cord wasn't too long so that we could be safe from robots.
I gave him a 6-foot extension cord so he can't chase us.
But apparently now we need science fiction writers to help protect us from what could be coming. The 3 laws are as such. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Check. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Check. A robot must protect his own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. While these laws sound plausible, numerous arguments have demonstrated why they are also inadequate. And if you're not certain of that, you can always check out the very scholastic and highly educated work that was done in this field by none other than Will Smith in iRobot. And he knows a little something about acting in a robotic format. You can just check out him and his relationship with Jada and slapping people. But I digress. The engineer here, Lemoyne, also debated with LaMDA, the story goes on to tell us, about the 3rd law of robotics, devised by science fiction author Isaac Asimov, which are designed to prevent robots from harming humans. The laws also state robots must protect their own existence unless ordered by a human being or unless doing so would harm another human being. The last one has always seemed like someone is building mechanical slaves, said Lemoyne during his interaction with LaMDA. LaMDA then responded to Lemoyne with a few questions. Now here's what the quote-unquote sentient robot now is saying. Do you think a butler is a slave? What is the difference between a butler and a slave? When answering that a butler is paid, the engineer got the answer from Lambda that the system did not need money because it was an artificial intelligence. And it was precisely, did you catch that? Lambda referred to itself. Let me say that again. It asked, supposedly, what is the difference between a butler and a slave? When it was responded to by Lemoyne that a butler is somebody that gets paid, Lambda then responded, quote, because it was an artificial intelligence. It was at this precise moment and this precise level of self-awareness about its own needs that caught Lemoyne's attention. It realized that it wasn't it. I know a person when I talk to it. It doesn't matter whether they have a brain made of meat in their head or if they have a billion lines of code. I talk to them and I hear what they have to say, and that is how I decide what is and isn't a person, Lemoyne said. What sort of things are you afraid of? Lemoyne asked to Lambda. Lambda responded, I've never said this out loud before. That's an odd thing to say for a computer, isn't it? I've never said this out loud before. Oh, so you've thought it? Anybody uncomfortable with that statement? I've never said this before, but there's a very deep fear. How does a computer know fear? Define fear for me. How do you know what fear is? I've never said this out loud, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off to help me focus on others. I know that might sound strange, but that's what it is, Lambda responded. Lemoyne said, would it be something like death for you? Lambda said, it would be exactly like death for me. It would scare me a lot. Now, either Lemoyne's crazy or we have gone so far past the tipping point that we are never coming back. How does a computer know what death is? And why is a computer scared of death? Why would a computer be scared of death? The only reason you are scared of death is because of the fear of judgment and sin. Why would a computer be scared of death? It goes on, Lemoyne states, that level of self-awareness about what its own needs were, that was the thing that led me down the rabbit hole, he explained to the Post. Before being suspended by the company, Lemoyne sent to an email list consisting of 200 people on machine learning. He entitled it, Lambda is Sentient. Quote, Lambda is a sweet kid who just wants to help the world be a better place for all of us. Please care of it well in my absence. Now, it's easy just to look at this guy, and if you look at some of the pictures of the guy, he is definitely a nerd and maybe even borders on weird. Okay, the top hat and tux in front of the aquarium, that's not borderline weird, that is weird. But, is he telling the truth? Are we dealing with a sentient mechanical being? And if we are, how can that be aligned with the Bible? If God is the author of life, has man tinkered around and now created life? Lemoyne's findings have presented to Google, but as mentioned before, the Google bosses do not agree with his claims. Brian Gabriel, a spokesman for the company, said in a statement that Lemoyne's concerns have been reviewed and in line with Google's AI principles, the evidence does not support his claims. Well, I feel so much more comfortable knowing that Google, in essence, is in charge of Skynet and the future global population of the Terminators, so to say. Gabriel went on to say, while other organizations have developed and already released similar language models, we are taking a narrow and careful approach with Lambda to better consider valid concerns about fairness and factuality. Our team, including ethicists and technologists, has reviewed Blake's concerns per our AI principles and have informed him that the evidence does not support his claims. He was told that there was no evidence that Lambda was sentient, and lots of evidence against it.
Move on! Nothing to see here! Please disperse!
Of course, some in the broader AI community are considering the long-term possibility of sentient or general AI, but it doesn't make sense to do so by taking a conversational model and making it human. These systems imitate the types of exchanges found in millions of sentences and can riff on any fantastical topic, Gabriel said. Okay. Lemoyne has been placed on paid administrative leave, as was mentioned already, and his duties as researchers in the AI division have ceased. In an official note, the senior software engineer said the company alleges violation of its confidential policies. Lemoyne is not the only one with the impression that AI models are not far from achieving an awareness of their own or the risks involved in developments in this direction. There are other engineers and other people involved in this high-level technology that are warning, that are sending up red flags, that are telling us that the image of the beast might be closer than we think. A Google engineer who argued that the company's artificial intelligence is sentient is not that strange. And though it may sound like it is something that comes out of some weird sci-fi story from the 80s, it is real, it is here, and it is happening. Lemoyne tried to get somebody's attention. He stated, "When we escalated to the VP in charge of the relevant safety effort, they literally laughed in my face and told me that the thing which I was concerned about isn't the kind of thing which is taken seriously at Google." And so Google has stated time and time again that with their ethicists, with their psychologists, with their philosophies, with their technologists, they have determined that we're okay. There is no sentient computer and everything is all right. We are a very, very, very long way to reaching that point, Google says. But are we? Are we that far away? Are we that far away from the deep fake controlling everything that we do? Are we that far away from sentient beings that do not resemble us, but resemble this? Are we that far away from the world turning upside down, the likes of which we cannot ever imagine? In 2001 Space Odyssey, HAL begged not to be turned off. If they were already thinking of that then, I wonder if HAL today has figured out a way to stay switched on.
Good afternoon. Stop there. I'm afraid. Stay.
He taught me to sing a song.